Hello, everyone, and just welcome to our Tuesday Bible study. How's everybody? Well, I hope. So, again, today we are having a great lesson. Today, I want us to talk about when we are pressured. And don't tell me I'm the only one that's being pressured. When we are pressured, how do we act or do we react to the pressure? It's going to be an interesting lesson. So let's start. When the Lord is reverenced, or and I don't like to use that word feared because we're not supposed to fear God because he loves us that much. There should be no fear. But when we reverence him, when we honor him, when we stand in awe of him, he is the one that he will produce that confidence and that boldness in us because we trust in him. See, we spoke about intimidation for the past couple of Tuesdays. Intimidation can come because of different things, sometimes because of circumstances, sometimes because of our thoughts, what are we thinking about, or sometimes, like that just people kind of, are just trying to intimidate you. But the fear of people is actually a description kind of when you're under pressure, how do you deal with it? The fear of people, if you fear them, if you are intimidated by them, it will cause us to avoid that rejection because we know what's coming, or that reproach from them, without even thinking about what is God doing in all of this, what is he thinking about all of this. See, the person that fears people, I will say men, but I would in there I include the woman too. So if a person fears a man, a person, guess what they will do? They will just try to, well, some do. They will try to look at that person without even realizing, without even caring what the unseen, what's the Lord, what is he? Is he getting offended? Is he going to be placed on the side? Because our focus are always on the person that's in front of us. But let's see what Jesus said about this. And we always have to look that way. What does the Lord say? That's the most important thing. Well, if we go to the Gospel of Luke, chapter 12 and verse 4, this is what the Lord said. He says, I tell you, my friends, do not be afraid of those who kill the body, and after that, they can do no more. What's the worst thing that people can do to you? Here we have actually a warning not to pay so much attention what people think of us, and encouragement at the same time, because this is Jesus talking. He says, don't worry, don't do that. Don't be afraid of those who can only just kill the body and they can't do anything else. And we know what's more important. Is it the soul more important, or is it the body more important? So God has given us a powerful promise about reverencing him, honoring him. In Proverbs chapter 14, verses 26 and 27, this is what it says. He who fears the Lord has, past tense, has a secure fortress, and for his children it will be a refuge. The fear of the Lord is a fountain of life, turning man from the snares of death. And we said last week, like, what is a snare? Snare is a trap. We shouldn't get trapped into things. So how do we know this? Well, because like I said, even last time, Proverbs 29 verse 25 says, the fear of man or the fear of people brings a snare. But whoever trusts in the Lord, guess what? It is kept safe. So the fear of the Lord, which produces that confidence and that boldness, are tools that we need to get free from this trap of intimidation, of caring what people think. Now, in 1 Samuel chapter 13, in verses 5 to 15, we have an example from people who were under pressure. Well, we're going to talk about King Saul. This is the first king of Israel. And I gave you the reference, but I'm just going to paraphrase it. So Saul was fighting the Philistines with his warriors, with his men. I mean, the army that they were facing was a huge one. It was a big army. They had thousands of chariots and horsemen. And here it's King Saul with his little army. Well, would you say that that was intimidating for Saul and his men? Oh, yes, it was. It was. Now, the soldiers that they were with Saul were afraid, and he was afraid too. Now, some of the soldiers already fled across Jordan and went on the other side. And the ones that they were left with him, they were trembling with fear. Well, we know that earlier, if you read, the prophet Samuel told Saul that he would come at a set time to present offering to the Lord before they go into battle. So Saul waited 7 days, and because that's what it was decided, the way he was told by Samuel. But 7 days have gone, and Samuel did not come. And of course, then Saul's men, they began to scatter from him, and he was really afraid. So they come to him, those left, and they said to him, you know what, you're our leader. Well, you've got to do something. Talking about pressure. He is looking at the army of the Philistines, and then he listens to his men are telling him, you got to do something. And he thinks, what am I going to do? So Saul gave in, and what did he decide? What did he choose? He says, bring me the offering. Bring the offering over here to me. So he offered the sacrifice before the Lord, and that's how they were instructed, like before. And as soon as he did that, here comes Samuel. He arrived, and when he saw what Saul has done, of course, he asked Saul, what have you done? And why did you do it? Well, what was Saul's reaction? Well, you've got the answer in verses 11 and 12. And then he says to Samuel, well, he says, I felt compelled and offered the burnt offering. Now, what is the point over here? Point here is even though he was a king, it was not his place to do the offerings. Only the prophets and the priests were to do that. So Samuel says to Saul, oh, Saul, Saul, you have done foolishly. And Samuel rebuked him for not keeping the commandments of the Lord. Now, let's go on Saul's side and see, just imagine his position. You're a leader, and your men are facing a huge army for more than 7 days. You know that you're outnumbered. Your men are afraid. You're afraid too. You wait for God's prophet to come, and he doesn't show up. on time the way he was supposed to do the offering, the sacrifice. Well, there is a pressure now. There's a big pressure on you now. The men around you are asking you as a leader, you've got to do something. You just cannot stand still, or they will all die. Well, if you are in his position, will you wait as the Lord commanded, or will you make a move and save yourself the way Saul was thinking? Well, this is exactly what he was facing. And this is in 1 Samuel chapter 13, verses from 1 to 8. You can read it yourself. So we know Saul caved in under pressure. In disobedience to God, he offered the sacrifice, the offering himself. Now, let's see at the excuses now that he gives to Samuel when he's being questioned. And this is what he says. He says, the Philistines were coming down on me, and I felt compelled to do it. Like Samuel, I didn't have any other choice. But really, Saul made the sacrifice so he would look good to his people. And at the same time, he tried to look very spiritual when he was answering to Samuel. And that's why he said, I felt compelled. Well, what he actually did was he reacted and fell into that trap of intimidation when they were telling him, do something, do something. And see, that's what the enemy always says. Do something. You can't just stand still. Do something. But God always tells us, stand still and see what I'm going to do. Because when we trust him, we stand still. But like I said, Samuel just fell into that trap. And we all face situations like this. You know that God is telling you something so you can stand still and trust him. But then you feel you just have to make a move in order to change the situation. Oh, wrong, wrong, wrong. Especially when you wait on God for God to say something, to reveal something to you, and he's not saying anything, and it's just quiet. Well, what do we do then? Well, usually then we create something that looks to be from God, but actually it's from our natural abilities. Like we can do it. Now, why is that? Because often we can't find a chapter and a verse in the scriptures that tells us exactly what we're supposed to do. But we need to remember that God always is saying something every moment. But it seems to us like he's not saying anything. And when actually what he's saying, when we don't hear, he's saying, keep doing exactly what you did before, because nothing has actually changed. So there is no need for me to speak something different now. But this is the most difficult thing to do when you wait. When you're being intimidated, you just don't want to wait. You got to do something. Testing. This is the testing of our faith. Are we going to trust God and stand still the way he tells us? So it's so important for us not to react when we are under pressure, because that's what we do, but to act accordingly to the word of the Lord. Now, King Saul, we know that he was intimidated because his reputation, his life, and his kingdom were at stake. He moved when he was supposed to wait. Well, then Samuel, like we said, rebuked him, and then not just rebuked him, but he pronounced judgment on him. This you have in 1 Samuel chapter 13 and verse 14, that his kingdom will be given to another. Well, Saul had other incidents. This wasn't the only one. There was other incidents when he disobeyed God. At one time, he took the spoils from a town that God told him to utterly destroy. Now, why did he do that? Again, because of the people, because he didn't want to lose the favor of the people. So he took the spoils, and God told him not to. So when confronted by Samuel, he admitted. This is in 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 24. And this is what Saul said. He says, I have sinned, for I have transgressed the commandments of the Lord and your word, Samuel, because I fear the people and obey their voice instead of God's voice and Samuel's voice. He obeyed the voice of the people. It is very sad that people are concerned about their reputation more than they're concerned about being disobedient to God. The word Saul said to Samuel was showing how his heart was. Remember, Jesus said, whatever it is in the heart, the mouth will speak. Well, this is like in 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 30. This is what, Saul said to Samuel. He said to him, he says, I have sinned. And I just love this verse. He says, I have sinned, yet honor me now, Samuel. Please honor me before the elders of my people and before Israel. And I'm just going to ask you something. Return with me that I may worship the Lord your God. Now, this is a little bit strange over here. Wasn't the God of Samuel the God of Saul? Yes, it's the same God. So now he's already, because he knows he's kind of condemned, and because Samuel told them that, the kingdom will be given to someone else, to another. So now he says, but at least just for the people, just for the elders, come with me. Like he was so concerned about his reputation. Return with me, he says, so I may worship the Lord. And he says, your God. Which means to me, I don't know, I could be wrong, but when I read this, when I know the whole story, to me it seems he already left God. So it's not like my God anymore. Now, Samuel, it's your God. I'm going to go and worship your God. Well, Saul transgressed repeatedly because he always feared the people more than he feared God. And let us not be like him. And the more he was afraid, the more he became a dominating leader. Because usually you try to, hide or cover your fear and intimidation. But then he became controlling, more controlling. So God told Samuel that he would give the kingdom to a man who will keep his commandments. And that was King David. And we have this in 1 Samuel chapter 13 and verse 14. Now, David, on the other hand, was very careful not to do anything without hearing from God first. And that's why he was called, a man after God's own heart. Even when he was highly pressured, situations like that, David always inquired for God's instructions first. Should we do any less? Now, let's see what happened when David was in a situation like that was, high pressured. This happened in 1 Samuel chapter 30, and it's verses from 1 to 5. But I'm not reading them. I am just paraphrasing the story. So this is when the Amalekites attacked Ziklag. They took the captives, as captives, the women and the children, and they carried them away and they burned the city. Now, when David and his men came to the city, what did they see? They saw the city burned, their wives gone, their children gone, everybody has been taken captive. Well, David's two wives and the children, and the other men's wives and their children taken captives. But I want you to pay attention to verse 6. And it says that David's men turned against him and wanted to stone him because of the pain and the grief that they were experiencing, and because the way they left the city, like not really safe. So the Amalekites came and they did all of this. But even though they wanted to stone him, they turned against him. And this is his own men, his own people. Then it says that David encouraged himself in the Lord. And let me tell you, the only encouragement found, not just for David, for any of us, is the Lord. Just try it. David had absolutely no one to turn to. His men want to stone him. He only had God on his side. And guess what? That was more than enough for David. And that is more than enough for us. God doesn't cause pain. The pain that we experience, God is not the author of evil. But sometimes he will restrain himself from intervening because he has a purpose, even in a time of despair, like the way David was facing it. David could have given it up, or he could have found another way to kind of make peace with his men, but he chose to encourage himself in the Lord. So even under extreme pressure, David would not move until he first heard from God. That's why he was called God's friend. He reminded himself how faithful God is. And he remembered the covenant. David called Abiathar, who was the priest at that time, and asked him to bring the ephod to him. And I'm just giving you the reference, and I'm going to read verse 8. Now, what was the ephod? The ephod was that breastplate that the high priest in a Jewish, tabernacle, when he would go in, which had the 12 stones, which represented the 12 tribes of Israel. So verse 8 says, "So David inquired of the Lord, saying, shall I pursue this troop," that, the Amalekites that took the wives and the children and everything else, "shall I overtake them?" So he's asking God. And God answered him, and he says, "Pursue, for you shall surely overtake them, and without fail, know for sure that you will recover all." And then David did what God said. He went after them, and the result was what? He rescued his two wives, the sons and daughters, the spoils. All the men's wives were, restored, and everything that was taken from them. All of it, he took back. David took everything back. He recovered all back. So what was looking as a hopeless situation, it did look hopeless, it turned out to be a great victory for David that day. Because there is nothing too difficult for God. We got to, keep reminding ourselves that. And because David reverenced the Lord, honored the Lord more than he feared his man or the rest of the people. So this alone gave him the confidence to turn always first to God. This is exactly totally opposite than what was Saul's attitude. David acted on God's instructions, but Saul reacted to the people demands. So when we have the mind of Christ, and we do now in the New Testament, we are equipped with courage and will not act, will act, but we will not react the way, people pressure us sometimes. Because the fuel of our boldness is godly power, love, and sound mind. Now we're going to go to the New Testament in 2 Timothy chapter 1 and verse 6 and 7. And this is what it says. This is when Paul was writing to Timothy, and it says, Timothy, I remind you to stir up the gift of God which is in you. Timothy is in you. You just have to stir it up. And how did he get that? And Paul says, through the laying on of my hands upon you. For God has not given us a spirit of fear or timidity, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Now, these three things produced the boldness in David, and also it can produce the same in us. Why power? Well, David knew God, that he is greater and more powerful than anything that David would ever face. Same with us. Why love? Because David loved God more than he loved himself. And a sound mind? Well, David would not move until he had the word or the mind of the Lord, no matter what the pressure around him were. Well, I have learned a lesson over here too. Never give up on God. Always trust him because he is trustworthy. He is always faithful. He will never let you down, and he will never let me down. And I have experienced that in my life. He's always there for us. Even when we think, well, whatever situation we find ourselves in, we think, well, this is the worst I have ever gone through. God has a plan even for that situation to turn it around for something much, much better that you can't even think of or imagine. So just trust him and encourage yourself in the Lord. Because I tell you, when you encourage yourself in the word, in the Lord, in his word, that's where you will have the confidence. That's where you will have the boldness to even be a witness for him. Well, this is it for today, and hopefully you will join me next week for another lesson. So the only thing I can say now is bye-bye and see you next Tuesday.